All right, you guys, good morning. Welcome back to the channel. Prayers to the people in Kentucky who are basically underwater right now. It's apparent to me that the core of the homesteaders of America are under attack. We saw it in Asheville. Many of these places, a lot of people gravitated towards to be homesteaders and to get away from it all. Out in these rural areas of the Appalachians. And unfortunately, it is apparent to me that they have come under attack based on these last several waves of horrific weather, unprecedented weather. So these people need our prayers. There are some channels. I know H3ll is doing some fundraisers to help these people who are literally underwater right now. So, that's what's going on. I wasn't aware of it until yesterday after the show, so I'm making you aware of it now. Now, before we get into the gorge, I wanted to show you guys this. Remember this? Bo Jiven pardons Fauci. He pre-pardoned him. Well, this begs the question, doesn't it? According to this is completely legal. Yes, a president can pardon someone for crimes they haven't actually been charged with. And now I want you to rewind to 2021. And you tell me, because back then, everybody was saying, oh, Trump can't pre-pardon these people. It's not legal. Well, apparently it is, and it happened. So why didn't Trump pre-pardon the people before his presidency ended? Why did he wait 4 years till after the damage was already done? Well, what damage was already done? The message was sent. The message is, you don't get to protest what we say you have to do. That was the message. So it doesn't matter that they're all pardoned now. The damage is already done. Now, let's get into this poison fog phenomenon. And this started up at the end of this last year, right? 2024, right around the fall and into the winter, this mysterious fog began to blanket many parts of the world. It wasn't just in America, it was everywhere. And so many of you will remember that we found that old TV series called The Rig. I think actually one of you sent that to me. The TV series was called The Rig, in which a strange fog seemed to originate out of the black goo DNA oil that they were drilling up out of the ocean in the TV series. And it literally changed the DNA of the rig workers. Now, I didn't get through the whole series, but that's what we picked up on from the first couple episodes. But it's the same story over and over again, isn't it? Because another film has emerged with the same exact theme. A fog which contains a pathogen that causes DNA genetic mutations. Now, the film just released a couple days ago. It's called The Gorge. And essentially, the fog exists in the bottom of a gorge, which the film itself calls the gates of hell. So, as you will see, they're telling us that these genetic mutations originate from demonic activity. They're tying the two concepts together. Portals to hell, gates to hell, and fog and demonic activity. Let's take a look at some of these clips. And of course, this is under fair use. I have to state that because this just came out. And let me give you the backdrop first. This guy on the right is filling in this new soldier. He's briefing him on his role for the next year at this outpost where he has to essentially guard the gates to hell that are down beneath him. And he's in this high tower. But across the gulf, across the gorge, is another high tower on the other side. It's almost like they're on a border of something. But in between, it's this huge gorge blanketed in fog. And they can hear all these sounds and everything, but they don't see anything for the first probably 30 minutes of the film. Now, this is probably a really good film to watch. I'll typically tell you if a film is either good or bad. This one is well made, and it reveals what these people are up to. They have to disclose this stuff, don't they? It's only the people that are really paying attention that are understanding this, because this film was filmed long before the poison fog phenomenon. But yet you're going to hear him say the contaminant is in the fog. So they're basically telling you what's going on. So the guy on the right is briefing the guy on the left, telling him what his role is going to be. They're both snipers, so they like to recruit snipers because, and you'll see why in a bit, basically these demons come up out of the pit and try to climb the walls of the gorge, and they have to pick them off one by one so they don't escape. But there's one on each side. There's one sniper on each side in each tower, and they're basically, it's the east versus the west. So there's the western countries in one tower, and in the other tower are the eastern countries. So like Russia. And they're told that they cannot talk to one another. They're forbidden to speak to one another or communicate, even though they have binoculars that can see each other across the expanse. They're told they're not supposed to communicate. Now, I'm trying to do a better job at explaining this stuff. I had a couple criticisms on a couple of videos. People are like, you got to slow down, or you got to like explain this better for the layman. So I'm trying. So if I'm talking to you like you're a third grader, that's why. It's because I'm trying to explain this in detail so that you guys can understand what's going on here. This is predictive programming. Nobody can deny that there was something in the fog, a phenomenon that at least people perceived was happening last year when this film was already made. Okay, so that's what we're getting at here. Now, so the only thing they know, they don't even know the location of where they're at because they're brought in on a plane, they're drugged, they don't know where they're at. But this guy surmises that they're probably in the northern hemisphere. And he only was able to determine that because when they were brought in, it was the same season as where he left from. So he's like, okay, we have to be in the northern hemisphere, because obviously if they were in the southern hemisphere, there would be a different season, right? Like right now it's winter in America, but down in Australia, it's summer. It's opposite seasons. But then this begs the question, doesn't it? It begs the question because they like to do opposites. So maybe what they were really saying is that this border to the gates of hell was actually in the southern hemisphere, because they're always speaking in opposites, aren't they? So at this point, all they can see is this fog, and then at some point these terrifying creatures come out. Well, let's get started on this.
The gorge is the door to hell, and we're standing guard at the gate.
Now at this point, the two soldiers, the two snipers opposite the gorge, they fall in love across the expanse because they're bored. They're sitting there for an entire year. They're both attracted to each other through the binoculars. So they start writing notes to each other and they fall in love. And so the guy says, I'm going to go see you. But there's this huge expanse. So what does he do? He shoots a zip line across the gorge so he can meet the girl. They hang out. And next thing you know, he goes to go back across because he's got duties to perform, right? He's got to check in and all these things. And he falls into the gorge while trying to zip line back across. And of course, she's fallen in love. So she goes after him. She parachutes down in there, and they find themselves in a toxic wasteland with poison fog. And it's a place that's frozen in time. Right after World War II, there's all these old World War II vehicles and laboratories, a church, and all this weird stuff down there. And they find that there were genetic experiments that were being done to create super soldiers. Now, it's interesting. You know, people talk about, let's go back into the chat real quick. You know, a lot of what we do is speculate, right? But that's all we're left with because these people don't tell us the truth. So we're looking for patterns, aren't we? Remember 10 years ago, you couldn't find a movie that actually said super soldier in it. Remember? I remember when I started this channel, super soldier was just something talked about in conspiracy communities. Well, now they're writing this stuff right into the script because there's some truth to it. They literally say super soldier. Let's go in here and play this for you guys. Now, spoiler alert, of course.
Exposure to the biochemical contaminant has literally merged the genetic DNA of the biological entities in our gorge environment.
So they find this old found footage, and they basically, what the toxin does is it merges human DNA with animals and plants. Animals and plants. You guys, what do you think's happening right now? They're doing experiments to merge us with animals and plants. Now, here's what you don't realize is that they're now saying that the bird flu has jumped species to humans. They have the first confirmed case. We told you something like this would likely happen under Trump 2.0, and now it's happening. It hasn't gone full pandemic status because they're saying, oh, for now, it can't transmit from the human who's infected to another human. But humans around birds can get bird flu now, is what they're saying. This just came out a couple days ago. Now, why do you think that is? Let's go back into the chat. Now, if you're new to the channel, we like to do a little Q&A and get everyone involved. So you're not just hearing a mouthpiece telling you something. Other people are involved and understand this as well, these concepts, if you're catching up. Let me ask the question. What animal were the first polio vaccines? I got to stop saying that word. My last video yesterday got flagged, so I got to be careful. We'll just call it the it, okay? What animal were the polio VCs or it cultured in? Let's see who gets the answer, and then we'll move on. And I'm going to basically lay out for you an argument that is pretty irrefutable in terms of mixing of human and animal DNA. So let's see who gets the answer. Monkeys. Yes, Droopy Dog got it. Yes, they were cultured in monkey brains, actually. And then what the first flu, where were they cultured? And Tonette got that answer right. And the person before her. Chicken eggs. So why are they injecting us with things that were made inside of animals? Now, you can say whatever you want. They tell us that science tells us, oh, that won't do anything to your DNA. Okay, I'm giving fair disclosure here because science claims that this is the case. Okay. So if you want to believe science, go for it. But I can tell you right now, they're programming us to accept in these movies that human and animal chimeras are going to be a thing. How do you think that started to happen? You can't start mingling DNA from different animals and putting them into humans without some kind of effects. Let's keep watching.
Are working around the clock to ensure this toxin doesn't escape the gorge. Some people are more resistant to contamination than others, especially if exposure is limited to hours instead of days.
So they're like watching this going, uh-oh, we're exposed, but if we can get out of here in time, we won't start mutating.
Human DNA has merged with plants, animals, and even insects. If infected, mutations will begin to appear within 5 days.
Now, remember we talked about the number 66. Casey, you're just making all this up. The numbers mean absolutely nothing. They mean everything. There you see the number 66 on this biological sample. They call it the final sample. This is the pathogen. And weirdly, if you take this and turn, let's see if I can do this. Let's see if we can do this. We're trying to rotate this. Okay, image. Well, that's a translator. Oh, okay, here we go. Let's see if we can rotate this image so I can show you this. Here we go. Clockwise, rotate 90 degrees clockwise. No, it's not going to work. If you were to take this and rotate it, it would say 9/11, wouldn't it? Let's keep watching.
They will present themselves physically. Like this.
So this woman, that woman was already starting to mutate. They're going, oh boy. Now, during this whole time, they're walking through orange fog, purple fog, and pink fog. All these different weird colors.
They haven't bombed the gorge because they're still studying what's in it.
And then next, they find out that more modern private contractors had been down in the gorge. And that they were continuing the super soldier genetic research program. They find evidence on a computer that he's looking at right now of a private contractor. What is the name of the private contractor? Is it the Swamp? Nope. Is it Blackwater? Nope. Watch.
Dark Lake.
Dark Lake. What is the spiritual meaning of Dark Lake? Well, it's the black DNA. It's the black water, the swamp, full of the alien DNA. Not really alien, but it's ancient Egyptian Nephilim DNA. It's the infective agent. It's the pathogen.
Paramilitary. We're not working for the military. They used all this to set up their research drones.
So the first clue that he gets that there's more modern stuff going on inside the gorge is while they're talking to each other across the gorge, they see this drone pop out of the fog. And it's a modern drone, of course. And here's the schematics of that drone.
Their drones are collecting hybrid DNA samples. Dark Lake is a huge corporation specializing in genetic research.
Young soldiers and scientists studied like suffering lab rats.
So, this is actually really going on. So they're fictionalizing it in movies so that you'll never believe it if you ever catch a clue or get evidence or stumble onto the truth. Now, at this point, they're able to escape the gorge. How? They use this Jeep. And there's a winch on it, and they use it as a lift to get out. But the controllers come to wipe them out, realizing that they're onto their little secret. And they send out Terminator drones.
Private defense contractors have been researching genetic soldier enhancement for decades. They're building super soldiers.
What's some other of those secrets?
The contaminant is in the fog.
The contaminant is in the fog.
The earthquake damaged the missiles and they started leaking.
Split them up.
So there's your Terminator drone. Rise of the Machines. A theme we've been talking about for at least 5 years ago. You know, we've been talking about Skynet becoming self-aware. We've been talking about this is going to be the scenario, and it's happening right now. Several of you in the comment section told me about your personal police departments that are now going to have drones in their police department, and it will only be a matter of time before those drones are weaponized, like the one you see on your screen here. And we already have weaponized drones on the battlefield, but pretty soon that will be brought home. I give it probably a couple years before the Trump presidency ends. there will be some police departments that actually weaponize their drone on some level. I mean, to me, it's already weaponized. If it's surveilling you, that to me is a weapon. Okay. If it's reconnaissance and picking up information, to me, that's a weapon. I know it's semantics. It can't kill you, but it can cause harm in your life. It can take your property with these night drones flying around, spying on people. Now, here's a good shot of the gorge, and the drone comes up out of the gorge, and then you can see the two towers, one on each side. That's the eastern side, and then here's the western side. That's the American side. Now, let's keep watching here. Let's see here. Let's get this framed up. So the controllers send out the drones because they have to cover up the mistake. They have to kill the snipers. And here's the big secret. Like, even though they tell the snipers they're only going to do a tour for a year at this site, none of them ever make out alive, because at the end of their tour, they pretend like they're coming to pick them up, and then they just kill them to cover up the program. So it's like a meat grinder.
Drone protocol, quadcopters, verification.
So they chase them down through the forest, but the plan of the snipers, I'm not going to give it away. I'm not going to give away the ending, because some of you probably want to watch this, but they come up with the plan, and I'm not going to tell you if they died or not. So, but what a movie, right? Now, some of you are like, Casey, this can never happen. Poison fog, come on. Barking up the wrong tree, Brown. Well, it already happened. In the 1960s, a known pathogen was distributed by our own Navy in the San Francisco Bay of California. Several people died. Many were sickened. We'll never know the true death rate of this. They're only going to tell us what they want to. And they used the fog as a vector to sicken people. Let's read about Operation Sea Spray. 1950. Now, when I did my research on this about 5 years ago, I found other places in the world where a similar operation had happened. I think there was one other site in America too, and it was more recent. It was like the 1960s. This particular one happened in the 1950s, which to me is still, I mean, this is post-World War II. Like, we shouldn't have been doing this to our own people, but yet it happened in history. In 1950, the U.S. Navy secret biological warfare experiment in which Serratia marcescens and Bacillus globigii bacteria were sprayed over the San Francisco Bay Area, California, in order to determine how vulnerable a city like San Francisco may be to a bioweapon attack, killing at least one American and sickening 10 more. Military tests starting on September 20th, 1950, and continuing till September 27th for a whole week. The Navy had released 2 types of bacteria from a ship off the shore of San Francisco based on results from... So this is why people are upset about night drones that they think might be flying off of military ships and things out in the water. We have a memory of this. Many people were alive during this time. So of course people are going to be upset. You know, someone tried to come on into the comments and say, Trump is not concerning himself with the drone, so he really didn't lie. He just wasn't informed about it, and it's not actually a big deal. It's a big deal. And he knows exactly where these drones are coming from, because he passed the laws to allow them to fly at night and fly outside of the site of their operator in 2017 during his first presidency. And half of his cabinet are drone manufacturers and dronies. We're going to call them dronies because they're all into this drone thing. Elon Musk, Palantir, Vance. Ellison, they're all into drones. This is what they do. So to say that Trump didn't know about this is insincere. He lied. He said, oh, he's the president. He should have been briefed. That's the first thing people wanted to know when he got into power. Okay, they were like, Trump, we need to, people are like, Trump needs to tell us where these drones are coming from. And he's like, nothing to see here. Everything's fine. They were all authorized by the flight people or whatever. They're all authorized. Everything's fine. And then we find out from the military yesterday that it wasn't fine, that these drones that they didn't know what they were flying over military bases and doing surveillance. So does that sound like everything's fine? Of course not. Does that sound like they were, legally flying around by the FAA? Of course not. So somebody's lying. And I'm tired of people giving a pass just because they want their side to win. There are no sides when it comes to you and I. We're all on the same side. The controllers are the ones running over us. And yes, a lot of good things are happening. We're cutting waste in the government. We're securing the border. Those are great things. But at what cost? I'm still waiting for the other shoe to drop. My mother told me the other day, oh, good, they can replace all this with artificial intelligence now. I go, Mom, are you listening to the words coming out of your mouth? You're going to let artificial intelligence run our country? This is Skynet 101. When Skynet became self-aware, it had full power and control. And it determined, because of its algorithm, that humans were the problem. Now, I'm not saying that the computer will actually do that. There are probably safeguards in place where they would never let that happen. But they'll use it as an excuse to wipe out a bunch of people. Oh, the AI went out of control. We couldn't stop it. We couldn't stop it. Not our fault. It was the AI's fault. Well, you can't put an AI in jail. So they'll use that as an excuse. Still don't believe me? Well, Ellison, Trump's billionaire buddy, both of his kids purchased the Terminator franchise. The very scenario that I'm describing to you. I'm not making any of this up. His son and his daughter purchased the Terminator franchise and did the last two films. I mean, how many more clues do they have to give us before we start getting it? And Ellison says, oh yeah, we should have cameras and surveillance everywhere. Maybe people will be on their best behavior. He's been quoted on record several times saying this. But yet, we're still believing that Trump has our best interests at heart. Some people are even trying to write it off as, oh, he's just trying to keep his enemies closer. I don't buy that. Sorry. Let's go back to what happened to these people in San Francisco. Look at this. They even had monitoring equipment at 43 locations. So they basically infiltrated San Francisco. They set up all these monitoring stations right under the nose of the people. I wonder if they even had gas masks on. No, they probably set up the stations and then they left. And they sprayed the people of San Francisco. Based on results from monitoring equipment at 43 locations around the city, the Army determined that San Francisco had received enough of a dose for nearly all of the city's 800,000 residents to inhale at least 5,000 of the particles. This is within the range of infectivity for anthrax. Do you still trust your government and think that they're always going to do the right thing and that they're not up to these weird experiments? This is right out of a Wikipedia article, you guys. It's public information. I was shocked when I heard about this project. When I first started researching it, I'm like, wow, they're pretty bold. They're just telling us what they did. Let's keep reading. On October 11, 1950, 11 residents checked into Stanford Hospital. Didn't take long. Let's take a look. We might learn something from this. So they sprayed until the 27th, and within a week, well, 2 weeks. So these people suffered. They probably came down with this infection in their lungs. They didn't know what it was. They were scared to death. Imagine older people, seniors, and they let them suffer. They sat there, they knew what was wrong, and they waited for these people to go to the hospital. They had urinary tract infections, very rare ones. 10 recovered. Edward J. Nevin, who had had recent prostate surgery, died 3 weeks later from a heart valve infection. Now, this guy, Edward Nevin, I talked to his son. We emailed back and forth, and he acknowledged he was the son of this guy who died, but he could not tell me anything. I said, don't you think it's weird that well, here's the part of the information that I don't think he knew. I said, did you know that this was a known pathogen that they sprayed? A known, because the people weren't making the connection. They're like, oh, this was just an experiment. They didn't know. No, they knew, because we did a whole show on it. We looked it up. We found that this Serratia marcescens was already known as a pathogen all the way back to the 1930s. There were papers on it that it was a poison. But yet they still spread. They literally were trying to genocide these people. I mean, come on, you guys, wake up. Wake up. I know you guys are awake, but to the new listeners, 10 recovered. Edward J. Nevin, who had had recent prostate surgery, died 3 weeks later from a heart valve infection. Urinary tract outbreak was so unusual that the Stanford doctors wrote it up in a medical journal. None of the other hospitals in the city reported similar spikes in cases, and all 11 victims had urinary tract infections following medical procedures, suggesting that the source of their infection was inside the hospital. Cases of pneumonia in San Francisco also increased, and after some Serratia marcescens was released, though a causal relation has not been conclusively established, the bacterium was also combined with phenol and an anthrax simulant and sprayed across South Dorset by US and UK military scientists as part of the DICE trials that ran between 1971 and 1975. So there you go. I was born in 73, so this happened during my lifetime. This was the UK and US military working together to spray the people in Dorset, England. There's no evidence that the army had alerted health authorities before it blanketed the region with bacteria. Doctors later wondered whether the experiment might be responsible for heart valve infections around the same time, as well as serious infections seen among intravenous drug users in the 60s and 70s. So there were some subcommittee hearings in 1977, but of course nobody ever goes to jail. There was a lawsuit. Here's the lawsuit. And I guess, let's see, this is the guy I talked to. In 1981, Nevin's surviving family members filed suit against the federal government, alleging negligence and responsibility for the death of Edward Nevin, as well as financial and emotional harm caused to Nevin's wife. Now, here's how it works. You know, these rich millionaires and billionaires, they prey on people like you and me. They have all the money and all the power. And if you want even the chance of having that, which I don't want it, but a lot of people do because we're programmed to want that. This is why you had an endless parade of people going on Donald Trump's show, The Apprentice, because they just wanted to be around somebody that might give them a chance to be as rich as them. And they prey off of people like you and me. And how they do it is they get you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. All the people that work in the Trump family, even before he was president, they had to sign non-disclosure agreements. The maid, the butler, the who, the whatever. And you can never talk about things you see. And this is how these people operate in silence. And you're going to sign the agreement because you want to be around rich people. You see what the Bible says? They tell you, the Bible tells you, if you seek after riches, you will stab your whole body all over with many pains. You can look up the exact scripture, but that's about what it says. It's because you get around these people and they use you. You become used by these people for all kinds of purposes and reasons, and then you're not even allowed to talk about it. And it's all because of the pursuit of riches. This is why it's so hard for rich people to get to heaven. Here were some similar biological warfare tests. So this went on. I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but this is just to show you that this concern that people have about this fog is real. It's a real concern, and it should be talked about. So that's Operation Sea Spray, and I'll put a link to that for those of you that are interested. Now, let's unpack this pathogen thing a little bit more. We're going to do that by a follow-up on the movie Gremlins 2. Well, what could Gremlins 2 possibly have to do with pathogens and viruses? Well, one of you sent me this, and thank you to the subscriber that emailed this to me. This is an article talking about Gremlins 2. It came out in like the 1980s or 90. And the guy who made the film was born in the same year that Donald Trump was, 1946. His name is Joe Dante. In fact, Dante depicted Trump in Gremlins 2. He was depicted by the character Daniel Clamp. And he admits that here in the article. Daniel Clamp's name can be scrambled to spell pandemic all. Daniel Clamp's name can be scrambled to spell pandemic all. And this guy who was born in the same year that Trump was said that he wanted to make film great again in 2016, right after Trump won the election. Set out to make movies great again. Now, there were many other synchronicities in the film Gremlins 2. We did a decode on it, but it was immediately attacked by YouTube and blocked worldwide. I'm going to have to go back and try to remaster that decode in a different way to get it to publish, because they even mentioned one of Trump's wives by name, by her first name. And this was supposedly before he ever met her. He had not met her in 1990. And look at this. This article from 1990 talking about Gremlins 2 released on the eve of Trump's birthday. Trump was born June 14th. It was actually the day after, I'm sorry. The day after Trump's birthday. So there's a weird connection here, isn't there? Now, understand that Gremlins 2, the movie, was all about a Chinese virus. The Gremlins originated from a Chinese shop in the beginning of the movie. And these things, the reason why I call the Gremlins a virus is because they replicate out of control when they're exposed to water. Now, in this article, Trump's actually mentioned by name. Let's find it. And what we're talking about here, if you're confused, is this is the Matrix, okay? These are the string of coincidences and synchronicities that seem to suggest that there's foreknowledge of events that had not happened yet. There was a master plan by the enemy. And if you look closely and you keep account and you look at all this stuff, you can actually see the future of what they're going to do. So look at this. Let's read about Donald Trump. Both Billy and Kate work in the Clamp Center, the high-rise headquarters of mega developer Daniel Clamp, played by John Glover, a parody blend of Donald Trump and Ted Turner. Clamp is about to begin work on his Chinatown Center, where business gets oriented. Let's keep reading. Okay, so that's pretty much it for Donald Trump's mention there. This was a 2016 article. Remember, this was before the pandemic. The pandemic didn't happen until year 3 of the presidency, 2019. So, strange, isn't it? Now, I want to talk about another virus movie. Oh, here's the anagram of Daniel Clamp. Pandemic all. You can't make this up, you guys. This is the Matrix. Now, let's get into, I've got this other virus movie I want to talk about, and then we'll cover a couple of stories before the end of the show today. Should probably check in with you guys. This is Charlton Heston. Everybody knows who he is. He played in like a couple Bible movies. He played in Planet of the Apes. And he played in a somewhat obscure film called Omega Man. Omega Man. Now let me explain to you the Charlton Heston matrix. Heston is a Biff demon. Now how can I say that? Well, Heston was born on October 4th with 88 days left in the year. October 4th with 88 days left in the year. Remember in Back to the Future? Doc Brown was hanging on the clock tower when it struck 10:04, October 4th, and Marty got up to 88 miles an hour to go back to the future in the DeLorean. October 4th has 88 days left in the year, 10:04 on the clock tower, 88 miles an hour. Now, what was this movie, what was this movie, Omega Man, about that he starred in? Well, it was the prequel, the named prequel to I Am Legend. And Omega Man was about a pandemic and a convalescent plasma cure that was given by Charlton Heston. He offered the cure from his own blood. So you could say that that's a metaphor for Trump creating at warp speed. Warp speed suggests time travel. It suggests when you go to warp speed, you can go to, this is all theory, right? You can pass through time. You're at the speed of light. So Omega Man is Apollo. Now, Heston also starred in many other movies that are happening right now. Planet of the Apes, Soylent Green, as we inch towards these scenarios. Remember the mixing of the DNA in Planet of the Apes? The monkeys acted like humans, and humans acted like monkeys. So, creepy matrix, right? Charlton Heston. Now, let's get into a couple more stories before we end the show today. Let me check in with you guys. We need an Ozempic Olympic update, don't we? Now, if you're new to the show, the Ozempic Olympics, we track the different celebrities and their amazing transformations in the Ozempic Olympics, but we all know that eventually people are going to start falling out, because they always do. The pharmaceutical companies don't give us anything for free unless it's some kind of experiment or people start falling out. Well, guess what? Guess what? Ozempic Olympics. Ozempic is now claiming 100% effectiveness. How? Well, you just go blind and then you can't see that you're overweight in the mirror. I'm not making this up. Ozempic and other weight loss drugs may be linked to conditions that could lead to blindness. So they just make you go blind and you don't even know. Right? Wow. Now, again, if you're new to the channel, we expose the injection matrix. They're trying to inject us with everything. And so what better way to do that than the Ozempic injection? We also covered the whole, the epinephrine injection. We did a whole series on that because those turn into adrenochrome when they're left in the sunlight. It's literally in the package insert that the EpiPen turns into adrenochrome. We couldn't believe it. It's right there. You can go look it up. Package insert, EpiPen. Search adrenochrome and it's right there. It turns pink. Pink. The color of it. It's synthetic, but it's adrenochrome nonetheless. We also found out that the Washington Monument essentially was a I guess you can call it a symbol of the needle. It's the serpent's needle. This is whole goal. His stated goal is to inject us. And then the line of sight from the Capitol building, looking right through the Washington Monument, which is aligned to 88 degrees, by the way, in Google Earth. You could go measure it yourself. 88 degrees. From the rotunda through the needle and right into Abraham Lincoln Memorial. Why do we call him Abraham Lincoln? Well, because in Planet of the Apes, Abraham Lincoln turns into an ape. Why is Lincoln important? He was the first needle president. They had just invented the hypodermic needle, and he gave it to the Civil War soldiers to help them with their amputations and the pain associated with it. And we had the first drug addictions in human history after the invention of the needle. It's always been about the needle. Why? Because it's the quickest way to get whatever this mark that's coming. They need to, a part of it will be medical. This is why they're wrapping all this together. This is why you hear the tech billionaires talking about health over and over and over again. These people are not doctors. Why do they keep telling us about our health and medicine? Last I checked, you're not allowed to talk about medicine if you don't have a degree to be a doctor. But yet we got Ellison talking about medicine. He's going to cure cancer. He's talking all technical and medical. You can't do that. You're not a doctor. We got Bill Gates talking about medicine. Why are they so fascinated with medicine? Because they know it will be part of the mark. It will be a component of the total surveillance state. This is why they're linking medicine into your ability to travel. If you don't have all your shots, you don't have all your injections, you won't be able to travel. You'll be in a cage. And they're making the excuse, oh, we have to control the pandemic. Well, go to Africa. Look it up. Go to Africa and look up the percentage of people that got it. It's like 5 or 6% compared to 80 and 90% of all the other countries in the world. Was there mass death? Were there millions and millions of people who died? Did all the doctors die and all the emergency room people die and all the teachers? No. Why isn't Bill Gates looking at that and studying that and as to why that didn't happen during the pandemic? Because they are lying to us. Oh, well, they're underreported. They're underreported in Africa. Okay, well, show me the mass graves. Show me all the graves. Show me the death rates that are reported, period, in Africa. There are none. So, what does that tell you to the logical thinking person? Oh, well, that's just because it didn't affect them the same way. You don't understand how these pandemics work. It's nuanced. Just because it didn't do, I'm tired of all the excuses. I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of the core of the truth community not seeing things for what they are. For what really happened. Because at some point, we are the ones at fault for not waking up and still believing in men. Now, here's another weird thing. Get off that horse. Anyone think it's weird that millions of chickens have been killed in the last 2 months? Yet, McDonald's thinks it's a great idea to double down on their chicken menu. McDonald's is cooking up big plans for chicken. Makes you wonder, right? This is about the dumbest investment you could think of, unless you know something we don't. Oh, we're McDonald's. We're going to invest in the unstable chicken market, where millions of chickens could be destroyed in hours across the nation, which would drive up the cost of chicken, which would make it unfeasible for our menu. Unless you know something that we don't. So, I won't be eating that chicken. Tell you that right now. We call this reading between the headlines. We call this noticing the inconsistencies in the news stories, parsing through the lies to try to formulate a picture of what's really happening. Because you guys, at this point, people are just swaying in the wind. They're just going with whatever. There are people that are so asleep. They're just glad Kamala's not the president. That's all they care about. And they overlook everything else that happens. Oh, relief. Kamala's not the president. Well, you're playing right in to their deception. That's exactly how they want you to feel. Go back to sleep. We averted a disaster. Kamala's not the president, even though Biden and Kamala were working on Stargate AI a year ago at the end of the presidency. Even though they were the ones that removed the mandate for soldiers to be required to get the IT. Even though they were the ones who spent record amounts of money giving aid to a certain country that shall not be named because they flagged the channel. But yet people are just like, oh, at least we don't have Kamala. So, I'm back in the chat. Little rant there today. Sorry, guys. But you know what? Somebody has to get excited about this stuff. So, yes, it is straight up psychological warfare. And if you don't sit down and think about what's happening, you literally will fall for it. People fall for this stuff all the time. YouTube channel asks why so many blacked out window cars are going through Chick-fil-A drive-thrus. Wow. That's interesting. Yes, I would also say that lockdowns are coming once Stargate AI is fully up and running. You guys, this thing is being fast-tracked. They're putting up concrete 24/7 for Stargate AI. And they say they'll have this thing mostly done in a year. It's another warp speed project. Another warp speed project. And anytime they do something that fast, run the other way. Run. So when these attack drones come out, here's how the sorcery works. If you're new to the channel, once the attack drones come out, they'll say, "Oh, you just saw that in a movie." When someone has a drone on videotape, firing a missile and exploding a house, and no one else saw it, "Oh, you just saw that in a movie." That's an AI. That's not real video, it's AI. You see how this works? And nobody will believe you. You'll have the footage and will have seen it with your own eyes. Oh, that's just AI that did that. AI made that video. It's not real. And this is why they had to unleash all of this artificial intelligence, images and videos. Do you see the beginning from the end? This is why we've been inundated with all of this AI video and images over the last few years, because it's in preparation to muddy the waters so that no one can hold them to account when they start flying drones over and taking out people's houses. I hope you see the truth. Nobody will believe you. This is exactly how they want it. So, it's crazy. It was a propane gas explosion. This is what we keep hearing, right? It's already happening. And then you see these people doing these tests on propane tanks. It's like Mythbusters and stuff. They're like, "Oh, will a propane tank explode if you shoot it with a bullet?" Right? We've all seen it. Propane tank doesn't explode. It's really hard actually to get to make a gas explosion happen. There's a lot of things that have to happen, but yet they have everyone believing, oh, it was a gas explosion. I've tried to dig into some of these people who have died in these weird, quote unquote, gas explosions. Very little information. Can never find any information. There's usually no social media footprint, which would make sense. Because if you're a person being chased by the government for whatever you knew or whatever you saw, you wouldn't have a social media footprint, would you? You would. Now, there's two ways to go about that. You either become super, super, super public, or you just hide and you don't have any images of yourself or any social media out there at all. I tend to go with being super, super, super public. This is why I have an Instagram. This is why I have a Facebook with thousands and thousands of followers. You guys know I would never do anything to myself. You know that. And if anything weird happened to me, hopefully I would wish that someone would say something and stand up and like remember us, you know, and that would advance the work. Oh, I guess Casey was right. They took him out. I'm perfectly healthy. I don't have any problems. I'm a very healthy 51-year-old man. Okay. So if anything weird happens to me, you know, you'll know. Now, I already know my fate probably at some point because I'm not going to shut up. You know, and they try, you know, YouTube's funny because they know that they can't do certain things. There are spiritual laws, right? And so they know they can't do certain things, and they know that our channel is super effective at waking people up. So what they've done is they've tried to flood the truth community with other, like, kind of like copycat channels. And so they've tried that. That didn't work. And then they try all these other little things. And eventually they're just, you know, as the police state cracks down, you guys in England right now, there are thought crimes already. Like 300 or 400 people have been arrested, and they're going to do hard time. Why? For just, they say, spreading misinformation and upsetting the public. Look it up. It's happening right now in England. You think that it's only a matter of time before that gets here. They're just waiting for the surveillance state to come online. Once that's here, they'll have complete dominance and control. There will be no escape. So, all right, I'm back in the chat, you guys. You know, I show people stuff sometimes. They're like, well, I got to be careful here. You know, a lot of what you see in the truth community, and I'm not saying this to brag, originated on this channel. And those of you that follow the channel know this, but new people don't. They go, whoa, that channel just exposed Lupercalia. Wow, that's amazing. Casey, did you hear about this? I'm like, yeah, we covered that in 2013. We were one of the first ones that showed people the connections between Valentine's Day and Lupercalia. They're like, really? I show them the video. Wow. Well, that other channel just said they were the ones that found it. Well, they probably found it on this channel. And some of these channels are massive. Millions of followers. And that's truth now. It's copying already established truth. Now, Q was notorious for this. They came in and everyone thought Q was so amazing because they found all this stuff. Well, a lot of other channels already had found that stuff. But it sounded all new. And this is what pulled people in to that movement, which of course was controlled opposition. Now we see it running cover for Trump, which then brought us warp speed, which then caused a bunch of people to, you can finish the rest of the sentence. I'm not having an ego. It's just, okay, so how are you supposed to know which channels to follow if those other channels are out there saying, we are the ones that found this and we're special? How are you supposed to know? So I'm just speaking something of fact. It's not an ego because it didn't even come from me. It came from the Most High. He's the one that helped us find these things. So it's not about who found it first. It's about you not getting tricked by other people. That's what this is about. Because some of those very same people that are showing you that Lupercalia and claiming they found it are telling you to vote for Trump and believe in Trump. So there you go. This is all about influence, and they know this. They don't want someone like me to have massive influence, because you would wake up and you would step outside of the right-left paradigm. You would understand that politics is all rigged. It's more rigged than an NFL football game. So therefore, they make copycats. They piggyback off of partial truth. And then people go, whoa, that person found Lupercalia. This is how it works. And I started seeing this phenomenon on YouTube, probably starting in 2017. There were a bunch of channels that looked exactly like mine. I'm like, how did that happen? Because we're kind of a special channel in a way, aren't we? Like, we don't do things the way other true channels do. We tend to focus a bit on the numbers, but it's not gematria. We're not a gematria channel. We see number synchronicities. That's what we see. We see 1988. We see 1966. We see these numbers repeating over and over again, and they mean something. We found that in the Bible. The Bible actually shows some of these number synchronicities. That's where we first noticed it. The number 40. Talk to you guys about the number 40. It's a very important number in the Bible. It was the age at which people became high priests in the Old Testament. It was also the 40 days and nights of the flood. And Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days. And the Israelites were in the, Jesus was being tested for 40 days. The Israelites were in the wilderness for 40 years. The number 40 means something, and we figured that out. God said, my heart will only contend with man for 120 years. Well, that's 40, 40, and 40. That's the 3 days of darkness in the belly of the whale. We found that a child is in the womb for 40 weeks. 40 means transformation in a dark place. Casey, I thought it was 38 weeks. Well, 40 weeks after the last menstruation is the full gestational cycle of a child in the womb. What I just told you was the body code. Yeah, I think I got probably the hugest slice of humble pie of most of, God has recently blessed me, okay, to where I at least have some stability in my life. But I went 10 years with no stability, and I kept putting up work. A lot of people gave up on YouTube, and they put in a good effort. But, yeah. Been a long road, you guys. But I love each and every one of you, and thank you. I get up and do this for you. Most of the information on this channel comes from you. You guys email me stuff. Half of the stuff we covered today came from you guys. So I give it back to you. And I can't think of anything else I'd rather be doing in my life right now than being with all of you. Yeah, I get tired sometimes and it's overwhelming, but you guys are amazing. If I didn't have the love and support, I wouldn't be able to do it. So, all right. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about today before we pop off of here? I'll put links to all the stories like I always do. Now, one thing we don't dive into too much, and it's just because I haven't gotten a direction from the Most High on this. A lot of this end times biblical prophecy, I'm not very good at understanding. Okay. All I can show you is things that seem like they fit into biblical prophecy. This is why I don't make profound statements and have, solid statements of fact when it comes to some of this stuff. I can tell you that a bad dawn is Abaddon. It's the same word. And I can tell you about white horses that Trump, was said he rode in on. What was it? Bobby Kennedy Jr. said this. Trump was a white horse, riding in on a white horse. I can tell you all those synchronicities. I can tell you about White Horse, Yukon, where the Trump family riches came from. from a brothel. I can tell you those things. But I don't know how it exactly fits into the book of Revelation. And I'll be honest with you, the Revelation is a little bit obscure for me in my brain. I can't make sense of some of it. I know parts of it pretty well, but I don't know where the symbolism, crosses with reality. And I think Revelation was written that way on purpose. So all I can do is show you what I'm observing. But you're never going to hear me say, I know for a fact that Trump is the Antichrist. People are like, why don't you just say it? Well, because I don't know that. And I'm not going to mislead everybody until I know for sure. There are agents working on behalf of the Antichrist. We can pretty much know that all the world leaders are doing that. All of them, because they're all ruled by Satan. We're in Satan's kingdom right now until the return of Christ. Until his kingdom is established and we have a perfect earth and we have a new heavens and all of that. So that's about all I can tell you about that. Because, that's not my forte. Now, other channels, they're really good at biblical prophecy. But you got to be careful because you don't want to be a false prophet. You don't want to tell people one thing that doesn't end up being true and it ends up misleading them. That's why I'm careful as well. So I let you guys pray on it and you make the decision once I show you the information. And that's about the best I can do for you on that front. Do I ever do Q&A? Yeah, we're kind of doing it right now. Pretty much at the end of every show, I give you guys like 5 or 10 minutes and I try to read into the chat and see what you guys want to talk about. So, but we've never done like a full Q&A show, I don't think. What's crazy is that when I do a full Q&A show, then no one has questions. The questions seem to come out of the discussion, the presentation that I give. And then usually more questions will come out of that, kind of like today's show. So that's, I think, a good format. I do not believe they grazed his ear, and I do believe in McDonald's ketchup packets. I agree 100%, Still Waters. We covered that. Remember, we talked about, here's a prime example. We did a video on the high priest ritual for sanctification in the Old Testament, in which they pierced the ear, or cut the ear. It actually says they cut the ear and let it bleed. This is in the Old Testament. Well, a bunch of other channels ran with that. And some of them actually flipped it to make it look like, Trump is the high priest. I go, no, it's a dark version of that. Don't you get it? The devil wants to be like the Most High. He's going to copy everything God does. And so they chose a priestly ritual from the Old Testament to basically seal the deal for Trump to win, because everyone felt sorry for him at that point. They're like, if they're trying to kill him, then he must be good, right? And it worked. It's reverse psychology. So, all right, I guess I'm going to pop off here, you guys. I've had you on here long enough, and likely see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, you guys. Much love.